Hi, everyone. Happy Bike Month. My name is Sydney Cape, and I'm with Get There, Oregon. Today, we've partnered with the Street Trust to bring you this beginner bike skills webinar. I just want to cover a few housekeeping items before I pass it over to Maddie for the presentation. You should have the option to either use the chat or the Q&A to enter a question if you have one. Both options will only be seen by us panelists, but we will be sure to read it aloud for others to hear. If the question is related to what's being talked about in the moment, then I'll pause Maddie and ask it and we can talk about it. Otherwise, we'll probably just wait until the end of the presentation. If you prefer to speak your question, then you'll have the option to raise your hand at the end, and we will give you the option to unmute yourself and speak out loud. And then finally, this webinar will be recorded and we will be posting it to the Get There Oregon website, so you will have access to it afterwards. And now I will pass it over to Maddie to introduce herself and talk about what she'll be covering today.
Hi, everyone. Happy Bike Month. My name is Maddie Carlson. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager at the Street Trust. The Street Trust is a membership advocacy organization representing street users from across Greater Portland. We advocate to break the political gridlock to address unsafe and incomplete public streets that threaten lives and livelihoods, and to win policy and investments that save lives, reduce barriers, and expand opportunities to the people and neighborhoods our current system neglects. The Street Trust envisions a complete, safe, low-carbon, multimodal transportation system that contributes to equity and access, opportunity, health, and prosperity for people and communities across the Portland metro region and beyond. So today we're going to cover a lot of stuff, and I hope you have a lot of questions for me at the end or want to share some of your favorite biking tips. We're going to go over the benefits of using your bike for transportation, some laws and etiquette, where to place yourself on the road, whether there's a bike lane, roads without bike lanes, going through intersections, getting lights to turn green for you, how to do route planning, choosing gear like helmets, lights, cold weather and rain gear, gear for carrying kids and other cargo, and about locking up. And then we'll go over some basic maintenance and repairs like the ABC Quick Check and repairing things on the road. And finally, we will end with a Q&A where I will answer all your questions and hopefully have you share some of your favorite tips and tricks too. So there are numerous health benefits for bicycling. From bicycling, you are exercising your body, you're keeping your heart healthy, you're improving your mood and your mental health, and you're strengthening your immune system. It's also more reliable than driving, often more reliable than taking public transportation. It saves you money on fuel, on parking, on car insurance. The average price of owning and operating a new car is about $10,000 every year, and it reduces your carbon footprint. Speaking of that $10,000 figure, every December, AAA releases my favorite pamphlet of the year called Your Driving Costs, and it gives annual and per mile costs for each type of vehicle. So if you have a car, you can look up exactly how much a sedan or an SUV is costing you by the year. It also lets you help calculate your actual savings if you choose to bike for a trip instead of driving, if you want to use the per mile chart that I've got a picture of up there. From the latest report, the overall average cost to own and operate a new car in 2022 was $10,728. So that adds up to a lot. I like using that average cost per mile chart on the right to calculate my savings per mile. I use the example of if my workplace were 4 miles away from home and I went there Monday through Friday and then run about 10 miles of extra errands on weekends, that adds up to 50 miles a week. I probably actually bike a bit more than that, just doing a few days a week work commute and various errands. But if I use that 15,000 mile figure in the middle column, I'm essentially pocketing $36 every week just by not driving. So that feels like real money I'm saving. Law-wise, Oregon doesn't have a set of laws specific to bikes. There might be people tuning in from outside Oregon, so definitely check your own state and city laws. But here in Oregon, we follow the general Oregon Revised Vehicular Statutes. That means that if you are riding a bike, you have all the same rights and duties as someone who's driving a car. Most of the laws on the books are all about being predictable. The vehicle and bike code is based on predictability for our safety. So that helps dictate where you are in the lane, for one thing. Taking the lane is safe. Taking the lane in legal. Taking the lane means riding right in the center of the lane where you would be if you were in a car. This is particularly comfortable and safe places where you can go the same speed as car traffic. A lot of downtown areas have traffic lights that are timed to a certain miles per hour. I live in Portland, and here downtown, they're timed for 12 miles an hour. And if I'm going the right direction, I'm going with a downhill grade. So it's very easy to maintain that speed and hit all the green lights and keep up with cars. So I feel safer and more predictable when I'm in the center of the lane. If you're going slower than traffic, the law states that you should bike as far to the right side of the lane as is safe and practical. This doesn't mean you should be on the very far right edge of a lane, but you want to leave yourself some room to go around any unexpected obstacles or debris that you might encounter on the right edge of the lane. And if the safest and most practical spot is to be in the center of the lane, then you take the lane. So the two rules are not at odds with each other, taking the lane versus being as far to the right as is safe and practical. Sidewalks is another biggie for bike laws. It's illegal to bike on the sidewalk in certain downtown core areas, like in Portland and Salem. And the vehicular code disallows currently e-bikes from being used on sidewalks anywhere. But biking on the sidewalk is sometimes very useful. Do know, though, that it sometimes gives a false sense of security because people who are pulling into intersections or out of driveways are not expecting people on bikes or people traveling at bike speed to be on sidewalks. So for this reason, know that you're not going to be as visible and therefore not as safe and predictable if you're on the sidewalk. And you definitely always want to travel at pedestrian speed or jogger speed at the most. If you're biking on the sidewalk, you want to yield to pedestrians. And when in doubt, you can always dismount and walk your bike. But utilizing sidewalks is sometimes a wonderful way to be able to get all the way across town if there's one area in the middle between quieter streets that you prefer biking on to link two half routes together to make for a whole route. So I resort to biking on the sidewalk if I need to traverse a particularly tricky area. And I love that there are so many parts of town where it's legal for me to do so. One very special and somewhat new law is our stop is yield law, which is just for bikes, not for cars. It's also called an Idaho stop law, commonly sometimes. It started January 1st, 2020, and that means that if the right of way is clear and you're approaching a stop sign and there's no traffic coming from either direction, you can treat that stop sign like a yield sign. You still have to slow down. You do have to check in both directions to make sure it's clear, but then you can proceed through the intersection without stopping all the way. So you keep your momentum up. And on bikes, we have a pretty much 360-degree view. We can see a lot better around us than in a car. So it's safe for us to do this. When it's dark out, you are required to have a white light in front and a red reflector in the back. Or a red light's good, better, and in fact, but per the law, you only need to have a red reflector. The front light must be visible from 600 feet away, and your back reflector must be visible from 500 feet away when light is shining on it. Here at the Street Trust, our friends at Thomas Kuhn, Newton and Frost lead an hour-long legal clinic, currently just virtually, for groups of at least 10 people. And you can find the sign-up information about that on our website, which is at thestreettrust.org/programs. And that's a really fun hour of learning all the rules of the law and trying to stump the lawyers about your rights and responsibilities if you are biking and walking in Oregon. So etiquette is similar to laws, but it's not law per se, just things that help make you be more safe and more predictable. Hand signals are wonderful to use when you're on a bike, but if you do not feel comfortable taking one hand off your handlebars, it is okay to keep them both on your handlebars, nice and secure. Just know that you're not going to be quite as predictable if you are making a turn and you're not warning people by hand signaling. Here in Oregon, we've got two options for making right turns. If you're not in Oregon, check what your laws are. You can either point directly right with your right arm or with your left arm angle up. I like to do a little point over my head to make it very clear that I'm going that direction. For left turn, you just point straight out to the left with your left arm, and slowing down is similar to the bent arm right turn, but pointing downwards. This means slowing down or stopping. You want to signal about 100 feet before you perform your turn. That gives you time to perform your signal and then put your hand back on your handlebars. So you're holding your handlebars with both hands before you make your turn. If you want to change lanes, it's a 4-step process. You want to look over your shoulder, then signal, then look again, and then move over. Looking behind you without turning your bike can be tricky for some people. So a good way to practice this, maybe in a parking lot or somewhere very, very quiet, is taking your hand off your handlebars and then looking over your shoulder. That way you don't accidentally maybe pull your handlebars to the side while you're looking. This is a tip per the League of American Bicyclists. There are also rear view mirrors in a ton of varieties. There are rear view mirrors that attach to your helmet, to your glasses, to your handlebars, in all sizes. It's also always good to look over your shoulder as well. But if you want a little more rear visibility, consider getting a handlebar or helmet or glasses mirror. You also want to make eye contact with all other road users. This is people in cars, especially at intersections, people walking towards you on trails, etc. And when you're passing, always call out on your left or passing or ding your bike bell. And finally, as I said in the last slide, always, always, always yield to pedestrians. Next, we're going to look at several diagrams for where to place yourself in the roadway. I'm going to do a lot of talking about intersections because intersections are common zones of conflict. When there is a bike lane or a striped shoulder, which looks a lot like a bike lane, you want to ride right in the middle of that bike lane or shoulder area. This gives you room to move around any debris or potholes, and it makes you more visible than if you were hugging the right edge of the bike lane. When there's not a bike lane, remember you want to ride as far to the right of the lane as is safe and practical. A good visual cue for where to put yourself is where a car's right tire path is. That kind of positions you not right at the edge, but in a really nice, 2/3 of the way through the lane, if you're not in the middle taking the lane, that is. I've got a photo of a sharrow with a snake on it. They don't all have cute cartoony characters on them, but some do. Sharrows are street markings that indicate the road is shared with bikes. Sharrows are ideally placed in the roadway to indicate exactly where you should bike, aiming your bike right at the middle of those the chevrons. For neighborhood greenways, sharrows are usually right in the middle of the lane, which indicate that you should be taking the lane because it's a nice, quiet street. And your best position is right in the middle. On big streets, also called arterials, sharrows tend to be towards the right side of the lane, and the chevrons ideally are positioned outside the door zone. The door zone is the space into which a parked car's door might open up, and you never want to be biking inside that door zone. You want to always ride in a straight line. Don't dodge between parked cars if there's a gap on the side of the road. It's sometimes tempting to make room for people driving to have room to pass you, but that's a lot less safe than maintaining your straight line and staying visible at all times. You also want to ride 3 to 4 feet away from car doors. That's how wide they open up. If this has you thinking that the width of a bike lane you're familiar with is about 3 to 4, maybe 5 feet, and there are cars parked right next to it, creating a door zone of 3 to 4 feet, if you're doing that math, you might realize a lot of that bike lane is right in the door zone. If you're like me, you might opt to avoid streets like that, because it's hard to appear predictable if the road markings make it look like you should be biking inside a door zone, but you know better than to bike inside a door zone. And you want to be at the edge of your bike lane or next to your bike lane in the other lane. So that's a hard situation in which not to create a conflict, or at least a confusing appearing situation, by not biking in the center of a door lane or in a bike lane if it happens to be painted in the door zone. Fortunately, a lot of times there are parallel routes, and it's possible to choose another route if you're uncomfortable, like me, biking at the far left edge of a bike lane so as to avoid doors. More and more bike lanes are being painted not in door zones, but there are quite a few that are. And I recommend not not biking in the door zone ever. And if you think it might cause confusion by doing so, consider choosing another route. And we'll go over route finding in a few slides from now. In terms of getting through intersections, if you are going straight, again, resist that urge to swing over to the right, making room for people to pass you as they go through the intersection next to you. You want to stay predictable and follow your straight line straight ahead through the intersection. Turning right, of course, is pretty nice and simple. You're already on the right side of your lane, and you're moving over to the right side of the lane to your right as you turn. Turning left is a little more exciting. There are several ways to do that. One way is to do it like a car with the four part signaling that I talked about before. You look over your shoulder, you signal to the left, you move to the left, you check again, you stop, you wait for the intersection to clear, and then you make a left turn. If that doesn't sound comfortable to you, though, there are a few alternatives. Number one here is the one I just described, going like a car from the left side of the lane. Number two is essentially turning into a pedestrian. You proceed straight across in the crosswalk, either walking your bike or biking at walking speed, and then you wait at the corner for the other side light to turn, and you proceed across walking or biking at pedestrian speed in the crosswalk. Number three is my favorite. This is called the two-stage left turn, or the Copenhagen left, if you want to sound exotic. And for this, you also use a second light cycle. You pull over to the right side, you make kind of a partial right turn, and stage your bike behind the crosswalk or limit line there. And you wait for the next light to turn green, but you're in the street, you're not over on the sidewalk. So as soon as that second light turns green, you're ready to pedal across the intersection, essentially going straight. This is a green bike box. These help a lot with those two-stage left turns. There are a lot of mini green bike boxes painted around intersections to show you where to stage for a two-stage left turn or Copenhagen left. Or if there's a big one like this, this is where you would pull up to wait for your light to change. They're also there just to give you a staging area in front of all the cars. The one in my photo here has a green bike lane feeding into it from the right side. And there's often signage paired with these, instructing people in cars to stop behind the bike box to keep it clear for people on bikes. Bikes typically start from a stop faster than cars do, so it makes a lot of sense to stage us in front of cars during red lights so we can be visibly out of in front and get through the intersection first. It's also very nice, considering from my second slide, that we're biking for our health and for the environment, and we don't want to be stuck behind all the tailpipes breathing in that exhaust while we're at red lights. Here's how to get lights to turn green for you, whether or not you are in one of those green bike boxes. There are wires buried in the road called inductive loops, and they detect vehicles of all sorts, including bikes at intersections. Your bike has enough metal in it to trigger it. And usually the spot that's most sensitive to bikes is marked with a little bike icon, and you want to park on this and stay there because it'll drop the call to the light if you move off of the little bike icon. If you see only a spray painted X, that's the temporary marking that shows you where you should park to trigger the light. If there's no marking at all on the ground, you can still trigger it. You want to park about a quarter of the way into the circle and make sure your front wheel is crossing the line there. If you happen to encounter a loop that's not detecting you, reach out to your local jurisdiction because they will probably come test it quickly and get it working for bikes again, either by moving that marker or adjusting the sensitivity. One thing to really watch out for is tracks of any kind. They're really good at grabbing tires if you fall down into the channel of them. You want to be as close to perpendicular as possible when you're crossing over tracks, then you'll be fine. So you don't want to stray too close to tracks that you're parallel to. And if you're performing a turn and crossing tracks at an intersection, make sure you're angling yourself to be fully perpendicular, at least close to perpendicular. Also know that it's okay to dismount your bike and walk across any rails if I've sufficiently scared you that they can be grabby. And when it's wet out, they are extra slippery. So walking or putting a foot down at a stop, be careful around metal of any sort, but especially rails. I spend a lot of time researching my routes before I go bike anywhere. I suggest you spend some time researching routes too, especially if you like looking at maps like I do. Often the best streets for biking are not the same streets that you normally drive on. Get There has an awesome bike mapping tool that you can find right on the dashboard. The same tool also shows walking, transit, and driving directions and can set you up with a carpool. I like Google Maps a lot for right here in Portland and a lot of Oregon. It doesn't work equally well in all cities, but here it works great for biking directions. What I like to do a lot is toggle between Google Street View and then back to map view so I can see what intersections look like. Now in just regular map view, if you zoom in enough, you can see if there's stoplights. I like using stoplights for crossing big streets. You can also get a good visual of how many lanes there are. That helps me choose my routes at all. Another fun thing is using tools that people tend to use for recreation purposes. I find those very helpful. The Strava Global Heat Map shows routes that people tend to ride on recreational rides, but a lot of times those are the same routes I want to be on for errand running or work commuting. There are also routes that people have saved in Map My Ride, if that's a tool you use, and searching through routes and rides on Ride with GPS, which is an Oregon company based here in Portland, I find very, very useful, even if it just displays part of a route that I want to use, and I can tend to stitch it into other things using my Google Maps Street View method. The only gear you really need is a bike, but there are a lot of extras that are nice to have. So I'm going to go through fairly quickly a lot of options, but do know that there are oodles of more things. So bring up any gear questions at the end, or if there's something that you need to ask immediately, put that into the Q&A or in chat. And then hopefully we can also share all of our favorite things that I didn't mention during Q&A at the end. One of the most important things that you probably have or need is your helmet. It is not required in Oregon to have a helmet if you are over 16, but if you do have a helmet, it's important to make sure that it fits right. Since I have my headset on, I'm not going to turn off screen sharing and do my usual helmet fitting, but I will describe the eyes, ears, mouth test. And I think I'll pick up my helmet to show you. Most helmets have a dial on the back, so you can adjust the circumference around your head. You don't want it so tight that it gives you a headache, but you do want it tight enough that when you don't have it buckled, you can shake your head and it won't fly off. The eyes test is when it's on your head looking up to make sure you can see a bit of the brim. That is a good way to tell that it's flat on your head and not tilted down or tilted back. You want it perfectly flat. The ears test, my helmet does not have adjustable V's, but most do, and you want the V to meet just under each ear. That is a good way to keep it snug. And finally, the mouth test, when you buckle your helmet under your chin, and this is the part of mine that tends to get loose quite often, and I tighten it at least once a week. You want to only be able to fit 2 fingers. You want that fairly snug under your chin. You should replace your helmet periodically. After a crash, you want to replace it as soon as possible. Even if it looks fine, that foam is only designed to be compressed once. Otherwise, there's no strict rule. Your helmet might have a label on it that says when to replace it. If not, the Consumer Product Safety Commission says every 5 to 10 years, unless the manufacturer says otherwise. Some manufacturers say every 3 years, some say every 5. Consumer Reports says every 5-ish years. An engineering firm tested hundreds of helmets and they found that the foam lasted fine up to 26 years. But do keep in mind that there are other parts of the helmet, like the shell and the straps and plastic fittings that can wear out before those 26 years are up. Clothing wise, same as other gear. If you've got clothes already, you are ready to ride. My basic rule is if you can move in it, you can bike in it. However, you do want to watch for anything flowy that might get caught in the moving parts of your bike, like long skirts or wide pants. That can be cuffed in. So that doesn't mean there are certain outfits that you absolutely can't wear with your bike, but you might want to do a bit of altering temporarily to make it work better. Lightweight and comfortable is a good way to go. High visibility clothes are great. So you don't need special clothing, but there might be one or more items from this list that would make all the difference for your comfort. Bike shorts are padded and they don't have seams in places that might chafe. A lot of people commute in regular clothing, but if you are at all uncomfortable, consider wearing bike shorts just for your commute. Fingerless gloves also, most people don't wear them on a day-to-day basis, but they're slightly cushioned so they can prevent sore hands, blistering, they keep your hands clean. Full finger gloves do the same and they also keep your hands warm. Bike shoes are not just the types of shoes that clip into your pedals, although those exist too. They're also shoes made for biking that are perfectly comfortable to walk in. They're non-slippery and they have very firm soles to make for a better push against your pedal with or without cleats in them. A safety vest is a really good way to add a bit of visibility on top of your regular clothing. And then there's cold weather and rain gear. If you already have a rain jacket, you're set for the rain. Even better if you already have rain pants. But if you don't, getting cycling specific rain gear is a great idea because it will work fine walking around, waiting for transit, as well as on the bike. Cycling specific rain gear usually has a lot of reflective accents on it. It might be a little longer in the back to keep you covered when you slightly bend forward over your handlebars. My photo has pictures of rain capes. These are great because they also shield your legs if you've got the cape up over your handlebars. So you're creating this nice big dry area. But you can also keep your legs dry with rain pants. There are also waterproof shoe covers and waterproof socks that keep your feet warm and dry. A thin hat under your helmet won't compromise its effectiveness. If you are a glasses wearer, one pro tip is to take a baseball cap and remove the little button on the top and put that under your helmet. That does the trick for a lot of people who wear glasses in the rain and ride bikes, but there are also a lot of aftermarket visors or helmets with visors that you can treat with water repellent spray that also do the trick if you find a cap isn't cutting it or isn't comfortable. We also have a winter biking clinic where we talk a lot about rain and snow and cold. If you want to sign up for that on our website. Or we can talk more about rain at the end during Q&A. It's sunny here today, thank goodness, but it will be raining again soon enough. You can use your lights all day long in the winter or rainy season or on a cloudy day, since the law says you need those lights and reflectors whenever it's dark out. It's not really based on hours. Battery operated lights can be just as bright as USB rechargeable ones. With both, you want to make sure you're well charged because some brands get dim gradually, and that makes it harder to see before they go completely dead. Dynamo lights are another option. That's in my photo to the right. In the middle of the wheel is a silver ball, and that is the dynamo. So while the wheel is spinning, it's creating power to power the lights. These are more expensive, as you can probably guess, but they're nice because they are always on and they're permanently attached to the bike, making them more theft proof. Most e-bikes these days have built-in lights that are powered by the battery, similar to a dynamo like this, although battery operated, which are also always on and permanently connected to the bike, being theft proof. You don't need to add anything special to your bike for carrying stuff. If you've already got a snug fitting messenger bag or backpack, like clothing, do be wary of any long straps that might dangle and get caught in your bike. Also, never hang bags or anything else from your handlebars. However, not carrying everything on your bike is nice too. And also lots of rain gear keeps its waterproofness better if you don't have a backpack or messenger bag rubbing against it while you're riding. So I've got a picture here of panniers at the back of the bike there. These are special bike bags that clip or hook onto a rack, and you can get racks for both the back and the front of your bike. They sit nice and low down by the tires, so it's nice balance-wise, not having that weight up high. They vary in size, but most of them carry a lot of stuff. I also really like having either a handlebar bag or a basket at the front of my bike. This puts stuff within easy reach, both for adding a layer or shedding a layer at a red light or having snacks close by or anything I might need at the ready. Trailers are another great way to carry stuff, even more stuff. Trailers come in all sorts of varieties, and they connect at various different places on your bike, like your rear wheel axle, like the middle of your wheel, your chainstay, which is a metal part of your bike frame that's parallel to the ground by your back wheel, or also up at your seat post. Trailers can carry a lot of stuff and you can detach them as needed, and then you're back to normal bike size. Do know that you are a lot longer for parking and manipulating your bike through small spaces, and you also have an extra element you need to think about locking up if you're locking your bike in your trailer somewhere. There are a lot of terrific products for carrying kids that I'm going to go through quickly. Also, many of these are good for carrying anything like dogs or kegs of beer or 6 bags of groceries. So I'm talking about kids specifically weight-wise and age-wise, but do consider whatever you might want to carry with these cool bikes. My first picture is of a trailer. Trailers come in 1 kid and 2 kid varieties. They're also adaptive trailers made to accommodate large passengers. Second picture has a front seat and a rear seat. Front seats often come with an option for a windshield, which both of my kids found super nice when they were tiny. The weight limits for these are usually 35 pounds for the front, about 50 pounds for the back. My third picture is a trailer bike. Those are also called tag-alongs or trail-a-bikes sometimes. Those can attach to the seat post or a special rear rack like the one in my picture there, or down at the axle, an axle-to-axle connection lower on the bike that connects a whole kid bike behind a whole adult bike. Then tandem bikes are a wonderful way to bike with kids, get a little pedaling help while you're at it. This picture is of a bike that's made to accommodate small riders, but there's also a product called a kid back, which is an extra set of pedals that you attach up on the seat post of, or on the seat tube of any tandem bike to turn a large tandem bike into a small pedaler at the back, which is pretty cool. Then second row all the way on the left is a cargo bike called a bakfiets. That means box bike in Dutch. They were invented in the Netherlands. It's also called a long john or a front loader, and probably more names that I don't even know about. Kind of the opposite of that is the next bike, which is a long tail, where it's long in the back, an extra foot long in the back. Those also come in a mid-tail variety and can squish a couple or 3 kids on the back of those. Then there's a picture of a bucket bike. You can fit 4 kids in that bucket, or tons of gelato tubs. Also cargo trikes with a big cargo bin either in the front or the back, with two wheels next to the cargo bin, making them very stable so you don't have to balance the same way you do on a 2-wheel bike. And then I've got a photo of a family on a semi-recumbent tandem. This is not the most commonly seen bike, but it's such a cool bike that I really like to include it. My friend and his wife used to ride this one together just as two adults. These are a nice kind of tandem because the pedaling isn't linked. Most tandems, you have to pedal in tandem. This one has two separate chains, so it's completely separate pedaling. When they had a baby, they put the baby in a car seat, rear facing in that comfy reclined seat in the front, and the wife rode on her own bike. And then they moved the baby to a rear seat and she was temporarily back on the bike, but then they had a second baby and put that one in there. And like, so it's this ongoing shuffle and it's a truly versatile bike and it's really, really cool. And a few different brands make those. Age-wise, quickly, for ages 0 to 1, the American Academy of Pediatrics says you should not have babies on bikes. Some parents do put infants in car seats, like I just mentioned, and put those in cargo bikes or trailers. Ages 1 to 3 are great for front seats. A lot of us call that the 10-mile-per-hour hug, having a baby right in front of your handlebars like that. Rear seats work well too for that age, or trailers or cargo bikes. Ages 4 to 7, rear seats, cargo bikes, trailer bikes. Ages 5 to 10, there is a class of rear seat designed for bigger kids than the one in my photo there. They still fit on cargo bikes. They fit on trailer bikes where they can help pedal, and tandem bikes come into play, ages 5 to 10. Ages 8 and up, ideally, kids are riding independently per our 8 to 88, all ages and abilities bike networks, but realistically, that might not be the way things are. So they still fit in cargo bikes and trailer bikes and tandem bikes. A couple tips and tricks for biking with kids or biking with anyone is snacks and more snacks, and using your go-to method for compliance, whether it's distraction or playfulness or bribery with ice cream. With any bike, whether it's a cargo bike or a normal bike or a tandem bike, I recommend practicing solo first, and solo with weight, like a bag of potatoes or rice in the baby seat or in the cargo bucket. Some of these, like the box feats, are actually easier to pedal if there's weight in the box. So practicing with weight, maybe not your precious cargo, but a couple bags of potatoes is a really good way to get used to it. I recommend, as long as it doesn't hurt your knees, to lower your seat so you can get more of your foot flat on the ground as you're getting started with a new bike. And then just give it time with any bike, not just cargo bikes or family bikes. For me, it takes 2 weeks for me to get comfortable on a new style of bikes and 2 months to feel like a real pro. And finally, one really good tip for biking with kids is giving them extra layers, especially if they're not pedaling. One nice thing about non-pedaling passengers is you don't have to worry about catching things in their pedals. So you can bundle them up with blankets and capes and things like that to keep them warm, or picnic blankets in a pinch if you've forgotten layers. Here's some optional equipment that also might make your commute or errand running all that much better. Fenders in the Pacific Northwest are a wonderful idea. They protect both you and your bike from rain and watery road grit. Some people take their fenders off in the summer, but some of us just leave them on year round. Handlebar smartphone mounts are really great for following routes and giving you easy access to your camera if you want to stop and take a picture of something. Most bikes come equipped with a cage for a water bottle. Your bike probably has 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 spots where you can put bolts to attach a water bottle cage to, but there are also a ton of different kind of water bottle holders or cup holders of various kinds that attach to your handlebars or Velcro anywhere on your bike. So there are lots of ways to carry water so you can stay hydrated, or snacks or whatever. Then there are also a lot of little bags that attach to all parts of your bike. The ones that go on top of the top tube close to your stem, like I have in the picture there, are usually called bento bags. That's a really convenient spot and size for putting a phone or a wallet or a little snack. There are also little snack bags that go on the side of your stem, under your saddle, frame bags that fill part or all of your middle triangle. I've got a picture of a saddle cover, or you could just use a plastic bag or a shower cap. These are great for keeping your seat dry when it rains, or if you're in rain pants, pairing those with a saddle cover also makes for it not to be slippery. Some people keep saddle covers on all the time to hide that they've got a fancy leather saddle. That's another good use for a saddle cover. Finally, I have a picture of auxiliary lights. These are both fun, but they are terrific for side visibility. That minimum requirement of a front headlight and a rear reflector doesn't do anything for your side visibility. But lights that show from the side, especially moving lights that show your motion from the side, are really, really great for visibility. Not to mention they look super cool. There is no guarantee, no matter your lock, that your bike might not get stolen or attempted to be stolen, but there are some things you can do to prevent theft. Not having access to secure bike parking is a huge barrier for people not biking whatsoever. So having access to secure bike parking is the first thing you can do. You want to always park indoors, never leave your bike outdoors overnight if you can help it. Even when you're parked inside, like in a garage, you want to lock up your bike. Outside, you want to lock to bike racks. Don't lock to poles, don't lock to trees. Here in Portland, people have cut down youngish trees to steal bikes or unscrewed poles like street signs to steal bikes. Lock your frame, the frame of your bike with the two triangles, that part of your bike, to the rack. Ideally also lock up your wheels too, but don't only lock up a wheel. Anything inside that's not inside your lock might get stolen, like your saddle or your wheels. Definitely remove removable lights and bags when you lock up. Most locks come in a variety of strengths, and usually, unfortunately for us carrying them around, the heavier, the more secure. There are keyed versions of all of these locks and combination versions, and those are both great. Starting from the left, I've got a picture of a U-lock, which was originally thought to be the only sort of lock you should ever get, but these other ones are great too. Chains, especially heavy chains, are nice and secure. It's harder for a would-be thief to get purchase inside a chain since it's flexible to pry it open. Cable locks, the thicker the better too. Folding locks are a little newer on the market. Those are great. And then I have a picture at the bottom right of an auxiliary cable. Pairing that with anything else is great. So I use a U-lock, and then I also have a cable that I gather my wheels in. So everything is in some sort of lock and locked up. I'm going to quickly go over the ABC quick check. This is a great way to prevent problems. Prevention is the best medicine. This helps you catch little things before they get big. Also touch on fixing flats and the importance of having a local bike shop. A is for air. On the side of your tire, if you're like me, you might need your iPhone flashlight to see that black on black print like it usually is, but it will tell you what your ideal tire pressure is, either a range or a max. I carry a lot of stuff on my bike, so I like to always keep my tire pressure at the max. To see if your tires are fully inflated, I recommend you squeeze them on the side. If you don't know what they should feel like, pump it up to the max and then squeeze them, and then you'll have a good gauge for how they should feel fully inflated so you can check more easily in the future. Some people do like running it a little low because as your tires squish down with lower pressure, you've got more surface contacting the ground for more stability. But fully inflated tires are less likely to get a pinch flat, which is the kind of flat tire you get if you hit a pothole or similar obstacle when you're not fully inflated. And in general, a flat tire is the most common thing that's going to stop you from carrying on with your bike ride. While you're checking your tire pressure, you should also check your tires for wear. If there are any bald spots or big gouges, check that your spokes aren't loose or bent, and check the rims of your wheel for wear as well. B is for brakes. You want to squeeze your brakes and test that you can't shove your bike forward while your brakes are engaged. You also want to make sure that when you're squeezing your brake lever, it doesn't depress all the way to your handlebar grip. You should be able to fit a hand in between. You won't have enough braking power if your brakes come all the way down to your grips when you squeeze them. C is for chain and cranks. Your chain should move smoothly if you move your pedals backwards. It shouldn't look rusty. It shouldn't look droopy. Cranks, the little arms that your pedals are attached to, if you grab one and shake, it shouldn't wobble whatsoever. Quick of ABC Quick Check is for quick release. If you have quick release wheels, those are the ones with little levers that hold the wheel to your bike. So if you do have a flat tire, it's easy to open that lever, take the tire out and take the wheel out and change your tire. But during your ABC Quick Check, before you get headed out for the day, you want to make sure that quick release is up in the locked position. Usually they've got a curve to them. So they should be curving into your bike, not hanging open. And making sure they're a little angled back so they won't catch on anything forward is a great idea. And then finally, check is part of the ABC Quick Check. Just check that everything seems to be working properly within the first block of your bike ride. And if it's not, turn around and see if you can address it yourself or considering going into the shop to getting help with it. Here's a picture of my basic maintenance kit for on-road bike repairs, which is probably going to be a flat tire, if not something similarly little. Learning how to change a flat tire is a great idea, although it is not necessary to be a year-round bike rider and commuter. Most bike shops have free or cheap demos and classes. There are also tons of wonderful videos on YouTube that you can watch to your heart's content to learn how to change a flat. I suggest you carry a mini pump, levers to remove your tire, a spare tube and or a patch kit, and rubber gloves, which I don't have photos because I usually just rub my hands on the grass to clean them off. But if you want to keep your hands clean, bring rubber gloves as well. However, if you invest in good tires and you keep them fully inflated, you will get few, if any, flats. And a lot of times it's easier to just walk or bus your flat bike home or to a close by bike shop rather than fixing it on the go. And that is a fine way to carry on too. If you're here in Portland, you can practice putting your bike on a bus rack at PSU. They've got a demo bike rack. And also at the Community Cycling Center, they've got an outdoor practice bus rack that you can practice at any time, or you can sign up for my Put Your Bike on the Bus clinic. TriMet has a wonderful tutorial with photos and a video online. And if you don't live in Portland, your bus service probably also has online photos and video tutorials, or if you can find a similar bus rack on a different tutorial. I really like practicing this ahead of time. Other handy stuff to have with you is a little toolkit or multi-tool, a rag, a snack, and Band-Aids. And even if you don't end up using these things for yourself, it's always nice to be able to help someone else with a mechanical problem. And finally, it's a good idea to have an LBS or local bike shop. This might not necessarily be the bike shop that's closest to your home, but it should be one that's fairly easy to get to. Finding a shop you feel comfortable bringing your bike to and asking basic questions of makes keeping your bike rolling a lot easier. I'm going to end it right there so we can get to some questions and share your favorite tips and tricks. Do remember to have fun and be predictable, and do please keep in touch. I've got my email up there. I'd love to hear about how you're doing and answer any new questions that might arise.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions, some good ones. So the first is, sometimes the driver of a car parked at the shoulder gets out without paying attention to bikes passing on the left of the car. How can we make how to make bikes more visible to drivers?
Yeah, well, so this is in line with avoiding the door zone altogether. So you should always be 3 to 4 feet and assume any car door might open. We do also at the Street Trust teach Oregon friendly driver class, and I encourage all people who do drive cars to sign up for that. That teaches people how to drive more carefully in places where people are more common walking and biking around. The Dutch reach is one thing car drivers can do, where you reach with your right arm, which kind of forces you to look over your shoulder. But yeah, the reality is a lot of people don't look and they just throw their car doors open. So assume whether or not you can see a body in a car that car door might open, and stay 3 to 4 feet away. I prefer to run a non-blinking front light. In some states, like in Washington, you're not allowed to have a blinking bike light, which is, I think, buried under the emergency vehicle code, not the driver code. So that is a little confusing to find that. But if I'm worried about triggering seizures, and just having lived in Washington before Oregon, not able to do a flashing light, but in reality, distracted people will notice a flashing light more easily. But the safest thing is just to avoid that door zone altogether. I hope that answers that okay.
Yeah, thanks. And then one more question. Does the stop as yield law apply at stoplights or only stop signs?
Oh, that's a good one. That only applies at stop signs currently. I don't know that there's been any push in Oregon to get a complimentary dead red law on the books. In Washington, they've been trying for a while, but one has not passed yet. But that's what that partner law would be called, probably a dead red law, where if you come up to a red light and you are unable to trigger it, you're allowed to go through it after treating it like a stop sign and waiting. But yeah, don't do that, because that is not legal, which is unfortunate, because not all intersections are able to trigger, if they don't have a push button that you can push to get the light to turn for you. If you're somewhere where you're legally allowed to be up on the sidewalk to push that button. So yes, just stop signs.
All right. Are there any other questions at this time? You can either enter them in the chat or the Q&A, or at this time you should be able to raise your hand and unmute. All
And
right.
remember that I can happily listen or read any of your favorite tips and read them out to the audience. So I'm sure I didn't mention everything. So weigh in.
Oh, I see another question. So it says selecting a bike can be daunting. I bought a women's specific bike. Any tips?
Yeah, that is a hard one. I personally feel that there are a lot of right answers when it comes to bikes. One big thing is if you want to be upright on maybe a hybrid type bike, or bent over on a road bike with drop bars. So that's one place to choose between like models if you want upright or road bike. I too have a women's specific bike. They tend to have narrower handlebars, maybe shorter cranks, more compact frames. I know a lot of men that also ride women's specific bikes, because they're not so much gender specific, that just like the parts are going to fit certain people better. And that's a fine way to go. If it's comfortable and you're riding it, you did good. Also, any component can be changed out, some more easily than others, and it's probably cheaper to buy a bike with the style of handlebars you like ahead of time better. I like buying used bikes, usually at a bike shop that specializes in used bikes. But even just going somewhere like REI, where they'll have a ton of bikes that you can test ride and see what style you like, and have access to different sizes, is a really good way to get a feel for something you'd like. So yeah, depending on the city, I bet people could recommend places to go, or favorite bike shops. And again, with the local bike shop, if you happen to be near a bike shop that you like, and they have bikes that fit you, I would recommend starting there. Or these days, there are tons of great bikes on Craigslist. And if the price is not amazingly too cheap, you can probably count on it being a legitimate bike that someone, not a stolen bike, because that's one thing to worry about when you're buying used bikes online.
All right, and we have a tip here that I've actually never heard of, and it's a good one. So on bicycle security, when I go to the grocery store, I'll just bring my bike in with me and use it like a shopping cart. Relieves my anxiety and uses at most the same amount of space in the store.
I like that. I haven't seen that a lot, but I do occasionally see bikes in the grocery store. Certain folding bikes like Bromptons have like a shopping cart fold where you just fold in one wheel and you wheel it like a shopping cart. But you don't even need that to be able to, yeah, bring a bike in. That's great. And then you won't buy more than you can fit on your bike as well.
Very true. All right, we have 3 minutes left. Any final questions or thoughts or tips? And as a reminder, we're recording this and I will send it out to everyone who registered for this webinar and also post it on gettthereoregon.org. All right, well, thank you all for spending your lunch hour with us. Feel free to reach out to Maddie if you have any follow-up questions. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your bike month.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.